that's a guy I've been telling you about, Charlie Hopkins. See there, still using my clippers from last spring. What a neighbor. Oh, Charlie's not so bad. Actually, he's a pretty good Joe. Jean, that's my wife, and I see quite a bit of Mary Ellen and Charlie. You know, cards, parties, and so forth. But sometimes, well, he kind of gets under my skin. You see, Charlie's the kind of guy that always has to go you one better. To show you what I mean, last spring I bought a new lawnmower. Nothing fancy, you understand, just a good everyday lawnmower. Well, anyway, I was cutting away and Charlie shows up. Naturally, I kidded him a little about that old rusty contraption of his. Well, he didn't say much. I didn't say any more about it till the next Saturday. I was out cutting the grass as usual, and then around the corner of the house comes Charlie with the slickest power mower you ever saw. I didn't pay any attention, of course, but in a couple of minutes he'd cut that weedy lawn of his. Then he just stood around like a kid with a new toy, and of course he wanted to rub it in. I sure was burned up. But then that's old Charlie, always trying to show off. You take summer before last when we had Joe Jr. Well, old Charlie was fit to be tied. He was really unhappy. Wanted a boy the worst way himself, you see. But all Mary Ellen brought home was girls. Well, anyway, I kidded him all summer. Really got his goat, too, because that fall Mary Ellen began to take an unusual interest in her knitting, and old Charlie began to brag about that boy he had on the way. I didn't figure he had much chance with 3 daughters to his credit, but he was sure, right from the start. Went out and bought a whole lot of toys, footballs, that sort of thing, like some jerk in the movies. Anyway, when the big day came, naturally he ran over here first thing with cigars, 2 of them, twin boys. Some guys will do anything for the last word. Yeah, that's Charlie. Oh, he doesn't always come out on top. No, sirree, I settled his hash good not too long ago. It was one of those hot Saturday afternoons with everyone out on the porches, you know. And out of nowhere, up drives Charlie in a brand new car. Well, you'd have thought it had gold bumpers the way they gathered round like they'd never seen a new car. Old Charlie was really eating it up. He kept looking over here expecting me to run out and fall all over him. He really thought he'd done it again. Well, that was just what I was waiting for. I slipped out the back way down to the station and rolled out Calamity Jane. I hurried back to the house, and sure enough, the crowd was still there, ohing and eyeing over that shiny new job. Well, you should have seen the eyes pop when I pulled up in front. They left old Charlie like a hot potato and gathered around my new buggy. Naturally, I showed them through and put the little lady through her paces. When I explained she was the new civil defense rescue truck in our area, and I was the driver, I can tell you they were pretty impressed. All this time, of course, I was watching old Charlie out of the corner of my eye. Pretty soon he just had to see what was up. So over he strolled, looking kind of nonchalant. Of course, Charlie knew I was active in civil defense. I even tried to get him interested, but he always used the standard excuse. Too busy, no time. Anyway, he hadn't seen our rescue truck, and he was pretty curious. So I went over everything again for his benefit. The cutting tools, the jacks, the power equipment, ladders, rope, stretcher, portable electric generators. The whole business. When I'd answered all the questions about the truck and the whole idea of civil defense, I invited everybody in to see some pictures I'd made when I was down at the Federal Civil Defense Rescue School in Maryland. Several volunteers from our town were sent through the school down there, and I'd put together a little home movie that told a lot more about civil defense activities. This is some footage of the school training ground. Looks like it might be London or Berlin, doesn't it? Well, that just goes to prove we take civil defense seriously. Actually, we learned a lot from World War II. Those buildings were constructed to duplicate actual situations from which people might have to be rescued. We got kind of a kick out of the experimental rescue work being done with a helicopter. They sure would be handy if we had enough of them. Anyway, the rescue man can even lower himself to the upper floors of a bombed building from the copter. But that's strictly an emergency technique. More than likely, the ones that are available will be used for general reconnaissance work and to deliver real essential supplies like blood. Locating and removing casualties is the main job of a rescue team, and that's what we concentrated on. Every day, we'd have a problem. Our team would be assigned to a building and told to locate and bring out the casualties. Our job was to rescue them. And don't think our casualties were window dummies either. We worked with real live people who volunteered to play the parts of casualties. They had a tough job. They were hidden all over the building, under debris, between collapsed floors and walls. Most of the time, we approached the scene in our rescue trucks, just like the one I showed you out front. They were called Calamity Janes, and believe me, they earned the name. Those babies were plenty rugged. And the equipment they carried was unbelievable. Everything you could want. Anyway, we'd drive to our assignment, sometimes from miles away, to simulate real conditions. Our team leader would assign each of us a portion of the building and the search would begin. Sometimes we'd spot the casualty immediately, but the trick would be to get them out. You have to be careful, of course, in loading a casualty into a stretcher, especially when you know it's real flesh and blood and a couple of stories high in the air. When a casualty is safely secured in a stretcher, he must be moved away from the building to a safe location. This generally means raising the casualty from the basement or lowering from a height of several stories. Casualty handling is easy once you know how. It's also pretty easy to carry a stretcher down a stairway, but sometimes the stairways are blocked or there simply isn't room to squeeze a stretcher through the debris. Then you use the slide for life technique. You tie a rope between a building and some object on the ground. Then with a pulley and guidelines, the casualty can be lowered. Well, this is one time when you better be sure of your Boy Scout knots. It's a long way down. Of course, we don't have problems like this the first day. We went to classes every morning where we learned theory and practiced techniques before going into the field. I couldn't photograph inside without lights, so you won't see any of that, but it was interesting. We saw motion pictures and listened to lectures by leaders in the various civil defense services. The field instruction, of course, was the most fun. I remember swinging down into an elevator shaft. There we are. We heard a noise from above, and I thought it was a casualty, so down the shaft I went. I remember it was kind of eerie down there. Finally, behind some debris, I found my casualty. Here was another interesting problem. One afternoon, we were assigned to a damaged area. We searched and searched, but couldn't find a single casualty. Finally, after about an hour, one of the team located our victim wedged under a concrete slab. That slab weighed about 400 pounds. The first thing we did was to warn our casualty to lie perfectly still, and then we brought up old Calamity Jane. This was a job for the winch. We hooked her up, and that old hunk of concrete came out like a pebble. In a couple of minutes, we had our casualty wrapped up and safely on his way. Those were 2 pretty busy weeks, all right. And don't forget, what we learned is just as important in peacetime disaster as it would be in enemy attack. Training in all types of rescue operations, and lots of training in reconnaissance. We had action from morning to night. After the film was over, we all had kind of a bull session. It got kind of corny, I guess. I did a lot of talking about this country of ours, how freedom was something you had to pay for, and not in money either. We talked about what could happen if we had another war, the H-bomb and everything. It sounded pretty frightening. Made you want to go hide in a cave somewhere. Except there aren't enough caves. And anyway, we all know that Americans never have hid from trouble yet, and we never would. H-bomb or no H-bomb. We've got a bigger job to do. More civil defense. There weren't any flags waving or drums in that room, but inside me, there was that choked feeling you get when a parade goes by. I guess we all felt it. Nobody said much. Wouldn't take another round. Not even Charlie.